All right, guys, so a few months ago, I tweeted this image here. And this is a chart of Japanese house prices. And the question I asked at the time is, are we here? Now, what happened to Japan is that in the 90s, they had a huge house price crash with house prices falling around about 50%. And over 30 years later, house prices haven't corrected. So I posed the question, could this happen in the UK? Now, this isn't a prediction, but it certainly is something that I think may be possible with the right set of circumstances. So in this video, we're going to be looking at what happened in Japan and the similarities there are to how things are currently looking in the UK. And the reason I want to do this is historically, everyone just assumes that after a downturn or a crash, the house prices are just going to rebound and go straight back up within a few years. And I'm starting to wonder more and more, especially with recent events, whether maybe we are seeing a major top like this that is going to be drawn out over many years and decades and not just bounce back in 5 years like in previous crashes. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So what I did, I jumped onto ChatGPT and I asked it the very important question, what caused the Japan housing market crash? And it came back with 5 different reasons. So in this video, we're going to take a look at each reason and compare that to the UK. So just very quickly first, the causes of the Japan housing crash in the 1990s were complex and multifaceted, and there is still debate among economists about the specific factors that contributed to the crisis. However, there are several key factors that are commonly cited as playing a role. So number one, the first thing we're going to take a look at, and that is the asset price bubble. In the late 1980s, Japan experienced an asset price bubble, which included a dramatic increase in property prices. As a result, many Japanese investors and banks poured large amounts of money into the property market, creating a speculative bubble. So an asset price bubble, does that sound familiar to what we've got at the moment? People talk about the everything bubble and how it is currently popping. So we all know that house prices are in a bubble and have been pretty much since they started recovering back in 2008. So this is the UK house prices. I think they're in bubble territory. And it's not just house prices. We have things like crypto. So this is Bitcoin, which was clearly in bubble territory last year before it started to pull back. We've got the S&P 500, which has been in basically an upward trend since 2009 and only starting to come down a little bit. And we also have seen bubbles in other things such as classic cars or fancy watches. This has been one almighty asset bubble. So when we go back to this and compare it to Japan, do we have a big asset bubble at the moment? Yes, I think it'd be very, very difficult to argue with that. So number two, over-investment in real estate. This speculation led to over-investment in the property market, with developers building large amounts of new properties, many of which remained unsold. So I think of the 5 points we're going to cover in this video, this is probably the one where there is less similarity. So they say here, with developers building large amounts of new properties, many of which remain unsold. I don't see that being an issue currently in the UK. Most of the new build properties that have been built have sold. This isn't like what's going on in China at the moment, where there was rife speculation. They built lots of properties and no one's actually living in the accommodation. That's what's happened in Japan. It's what's happening in China, but that isn't what has happened in the UK. However, there has been speculation on the property market. We know that people are expecting their properties to go up in value. Many people seeing them as a pension, many people buying properties to flip. And also we had the buy-to-let speculation as well, with buy-to-let exploding since 2007 and 8, basically doubling inside the private rental sector. So there has been mass speculation on the property sector, but I wouldn't say it's directly comparable. We have lots of properties that are unsold. So moving on to point 3, high levels of debt. Many Japanese companies and individuals took on high levels of debt to invest in the property market. That sounds familiar, with the assumption that property prices would continue to rise indefinitely. So I think that is the mindset of many people that have bought houses over the past decade or two. People expect housing prices to continue going up regardless. And many people have leveraged themselves up to the hilt with highly expensive mortgages. So we have huge debt in this country. We have massive national debt. So the government, we have huge national debt. We're at basically 100% of GDP at the moment. That is massive amounts of debt, and individual debt as well. This is household debt in the UK is up to around about 1.8 trillion. So that's personal debt plus the mortgages as well. So I think it is fair to say that point 3 also applies here in the UK, that we have high levels of debt and many people are under the assumption that property prices will continue to rise indefinitely. So number 4, what contributed towards the Japan house price crash? Tight monetary policy in response to concerns about inflation. Again, that rings a bell. The Bank of Japan raised interest rates in the early 1990s, which made it more difficult for borrowers to service their debts and contributed to a decline in property prices. And as you guys are fully aware, the Bank of England and other Western central banks have been doing exactly the same. They've been putting interest rates up, which is what has basically broken the banking sector at the moment. But I'm going to come back to that in future videos. So interest rates have gone up, so it's more expensive to get mortgages, it's more expensive to borrow debt. And they've also stopped quantitative easing, or officially they've stopped it, although they've technically kind of restarted it at the moment with the banking crisis that's going on. So that means there's less liquidity available for lending as well. So far, out of 4 points, 3 of them match very well and 1 of them half matches. And the final point is the demographic factors. Japan's aging population, again, a similarity what is happening in the UK, and declining birth rate, again, that is what is happening in the UK, also contributed to the housing crash as the population shrank. Our population isn't shrinking at the moment, but that is purely down to immigration, not down to our natural birth rate. Demand for housing decreased, leading to an oversupply of properties and a decline in prices. So that is something I can see happening over a longer period of time. And I've got a couple of articles here. We've got one from the Financial Times. UK natural population set to start to decline by 2025. So in the next couple of years, the ONS are predicting that the natural population of the UK will begin to decline by the middle of the decade, leaving the country dependent on migration to increase the working age population, according to new data. Falling birth rates and an aging population mean more people will die than are born annually by 2025, making a long-term reversal of a historic trend, projections released on Wednesday by the ONS showed. So if we have a declining population that is only being supported by immigration, what will happen if immigration starts to slow down as well? Because the UK is becoming a less and less attractive place for people to want to come to. Now, I know immigration last year was at record levels, but we don't know what the new figures are going to be after the impacts of Brexit and the COVID and all the pent-up demand. We don't know what the new figure is going to be. But it may be the case that the UK population starts to level out and decline, which will decrease the pressure on housing. And this is the UK's current fertility rate. Now, this isn't completely accurate because in 2022, there was a very small uptick because when we were all locked down in 2020 and 2021, we had nothing better to do. But overall, the fertility rate was heading down. So we are not producing enough babies naturally in the UK, and without immigration, the whole Ponzi scheme falls apart. So overall, when you look at those 5 points, in many ways, we are in a similar situation to what happened in Japan. Are we here? Maybe. We will see. This isn't a prediction as to what's going to happen. This is just recognizing it may not always go up, or the crash may not always be the same, and then the recovery may not always be the same. Remember, a lot of people's predictions are based on what happened historically, and historic recessions and crashes, the markets have been given a full chance to reset so that house prices can go again. Now, in 2008, that didn't happen. We bailed out the banks. We had massive quantitative easing. We cut interest rates. We stopped a full correction. And at the moment, they're trying to do the same thing with bailing out the banks again. So all the time we don't get these full corrections, the economy doesn't get to reset correctly, then maybe we don't go fully, we don't go upwards and to the right forever. Maybe we're going to see a more prolonged, drawn out correction in house prices that actually would be very beneficial for current and future generations. And just finally, before I wrap this video up, just something for you guys to ponder. Housing prices in Japan remain down nearly 50% from their late 1980s peak, more than 30 years later. How could these prices possibly ever get so out of whack with reality? The same way they do in every financial asset bubble in history, people willfully suspended their disbelief. I wonder if some of that suspension of disbelief is going on at the moment. So Are we here? We'll find out over the next decade or so, but hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you did, I'd appreciate it. Scroll down and hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, there is a link in the pinned top comment. And what I'm going to do now is pop up a video talking you guys through why I believe this could potentially be worse than 2008. And I'll see you guys over there.